How's it going, guys and girls? Hope you guys are having a great weekend. So I'm back with my second Uncharted video, and this one will focus on the main story plot points that happen in the first 3 games, and will hopefully get you ready for Uncharted 4, which comes out on the 10th of May. So my aim is to keep this video as short, concise and informative as possible, so here goes. At the beginning of the first game, Uncharted Drake's Fortune, we start with treasure hunter Nathan Drake and TV show host Elena Fisher on a boat off the coast of Panama. Having just found and recovered the coffin of legendary explorer Sir Francis Drake, Nate's supposed ancestor, Nate opens the coffin only to discover that it is empty, except for a small metal box containing Sir Francis Drake's diary. Confirming his theory that Sir Francis Drake faked his own death, before he can elaborate on the contents of the diary, Elena and Drake are attacked by pirates, and after a brief shootout, Nate's partner Sully arrives in his seaplane, rescuing the pair as their ship explodes. Now, back on the mainland, Nate reveals to Sully that the diary contains clues that Sir Francis Drake had hidden his final treasure and had discovered the location of El Dorado, the fabled lost city of gold. Eager to go after the treasure and not wanting to risk competition, Sully convinces Nate to ditch Elena, and the two drive away in their boat, leaving her on the dock. Nate and Sully begin their search for El Dorado in the jungles of Central America. Following the map in the diary, they arrive at the entrance to an ancient Mayan temple and discover archaeological remains of Spanish soldiers and an empty hollow niche in the back wall where a statue stood, and they realize that El Dorado is not a city of gold at all, but a golden statue. Nate deduces that the statue was long ago dragged out of the temple on cut logs by the Spanish conquistadors. Following the tracks, they stumble across a deserted U-boat. Leaving Sully on the shoreline with the diary, Nate eagerly explores the U-boat and finds the remains of the captain, along with a Kriegsmarine map which shows the location of an island that the Spanish took the El Dorado statue to, along with a hand-drawn map that shows the island in more detail. Returning to shore, he discovers that Sully is being held at gunpoint by Gabriel Roman and the rival treasure hunter Atok Navarro and Eddie Raja and his mercenaries. Roman informs Drake that Sully owes him a lot of money and he is there to collect. Roman takes the map from Drake by force and then shoots Sully in the chest. As Sully falls to the ground, the submarine explodes, giving Nate the opportunity he needs to flee into the forest, where he runs into Elena. She greets him with a punch for leaving her behind, and the two fight their way through Navarro's mercenaries before escaping in a jeep. Using Sully's seaplane, Nate and Elena fly to an uncharted island in the South Pacific, but are forced to bail when their plane is shot down by pirates. Separated after a bumpy landing, Drake searches for Elena. Seeing her parachute hanging off a ruined tower, he heads to the fortress. Noticing that one of the towers matches the one drawn on the map that he recovered from the U-boat, he scales the tower's outer walls and finds Sir Francis Drake's telescope and uses it to study a distant harbour, where he sees the ships that brought Sir Francis Drake to the island ruined on the shore, leading him to deduce that Drake never actually left the island alive. He also spots Elena, who is about to be killed by one of Raja's mercenaries. Nate opens fire on them, but is ultimately knocked unconscious and captured. He wakes up in a jail cell and is interrogated by Eddie Raja, who tells him that his men are dying mysteriously and that the island is cursed. He asks for Nate's help, but Nate refuses to cooperate and is rescued by Elena, who literally rips the back wall out of the jail cell. The two flee in a jeep, which ends in a bit of a standoff and a tumble into the water. As Elena and Nate fight and navigate their way through the deserted harbour town, we experience our first major twist in the plot. We discover that Sully is alive and working with Roman and Navarro. Nate works out that they are travelling to the monastery, and the two head in that direction. They are reunited with Sully, who is being held at gunpoint and forced to help Roman. When questioned on how he survived a point-blank gunshot, Sully reveals Sir Francis Drake's diary, which stopped the bullet and saved his life. Solving a puzzle, Nate opens a passage into a labyrinth of catacombs, which he ventures into alone. Following clues that lead him to the mausoleum and a treasure vault, there, along with Elena, he finds the remains of Sir Francis Drake and Eddie and one of his men. In a bizarre twist of events, Drake and Eddie are attacked by a human-like creature that kills Eddie and nearly kills Nate, if not for Elena's help and a life-saving rope and hoist. They eventually pass through a large metal door and discover that they are in a German submarine bunker. While Elena stays behind in the control room, Drake moves further into the bunker and discovers a projector which shows footage of a German expedition and reveals that the El Dorado statue bears a terrible curse that has turned all the World War II German soldiers and the Spanish colonists into the mindless, feral creatures that Drake has been fighting. Returning to the control room, Nate sees Elena being captured and is left to fight his way through the mercenaries and monsters to the surface. Reuniting with Sully, they enter the church catacombs and rush to Elena's rescue and the final confrontation. In a large cavern, they witness Navarro tricking Roman into opening the El Dorado statue, revealing a mummy inside. He falls victim to the curse and is shot dead. Navarro escapes with the statue and Elena aboard a helicopter, but not before Nate jumps onto the statue. In a tussle between Elena and one of Navarro's men, the pilot is shot and the helicopter crashes onto Navarro's ship. Nate faces off against Navarro and after some fisticuffs and gunshots, knocks Navarro to the ground. Navarro becomes tangled in the rope connected to the statue, and Nate takes advantage of this, pushing the helicopter into the ocean, pulling the statue and Navarro along with it into the depths below. Nate and Elena have a moment aboard the ship, which is interrupted by Sully, who reveals that he was able to save some of the treasure, and the three sail off into the sunset, and this is the end of the first game. The story of Uncharted 2 Among Thieves begins with a wounded Nathan Drake waking up to find himself in a train hanging off a cliff with a bloody stomach wound. Through flashbacks, it is revealed that former associate Harry Flynn and old girlfriend Chloe Fraser approached him with a job to steal a Mongolian oil lamp from an Istanbul museum. Nate accepts the job when he learns that the lamp may lead to the treasure of Marco Polo's lost fleet. Harry and Jake acquired the lamp, which contains a map showing that the lost fleet had been transporting the Chintamani stone from the mythical city of Shambhala, better known as Shangri-La, before being thrown ashore in Borneo by a tsunami. Taking the map, Flynn double-crosses Drake, who is arrested and imprisoned for 3 months. Chloe, who claims to have no knowledge of Flynn's treachery, asks for the help of Drake's friend Victor Sullivan to secure his release. Nate and Sully follow Flynn and his boss Zoran Lazarevic, a Serbian war criminal who is widely thought to be dead, to Borneo. With the help of Chloe working within Lazarevic's camp as a mole, they discover that the Lost Fleet never actually possessed the Chintamani stone. They locate a tomb containing the bodies of Polo's passengers, as well as a Tibetan purba, and a letter from Polo saying that the next clue is in Kathmandu, Nepal, in a temple. Flynn and his men appear in the temple soon after and take the letter, while Nate and Sully escape by jumping off a cliff into a river. Nate and Chloe head to Nepal, finding conflict as Lazarevic's mercenary army ravage the city looking for the right temple. En route to the temple, the pair run into Elena Fisher and her cameraman Jeff, who are tracking down Lazarevic to prove that he is still alive. The four reach the temple. Nate and Chloe discover that the stone and Shambhala are in the Himalayas. As they are about to leave, they are ambushed, and Nate runs out to help Elena and Jeff, who were left at the temple entrance, only to discover that Jeff has been shot by one of Lazarevic's men. Despite Chloe's insistence to leave Jeff behind, Elena and Nate insist on helping him, and they push on until they are caught. Chloe reluctantly pulls her gun on Nate to protect her cover, while Lazarevic executes Jeff. While Lazarevic and Chloe leave for the train yard, Flynn is told to kill Nate and Elena, but Nate punches Flynn and the couple manage to escape. Elena is skeptical about helping Chloe, who she doesn't really trust, but ultimately she decides to help Drake. Together, they plan and catch up with Lazarevic's train on a stolen jeep driven by Elena. Nate jumps onto the train and has to fight a bunch of soldiers as well as survive an attack from a helicopter. Drake finds Chloe, but she refuses to leave with him, not wanting to blow her cover. As the two argue, Flynn arrives and shoots Nate in the abdomen. Chloe then jumps in front of Flynn, giving Nate a chance to run. With Flynn distracted, soldiers pursue Drake until he is cornered. With no other option, Nate shoots a pile of propane tanks, killing Flynn's men and sending Nate's half of the train over a steep cliff, returning to where the game began. Nate escapes the train and travels through a snowstorm, recovering the Perber among the wreckage before falling unconscious. He awakens in a Tibetan village where he is reunited with Elena and is introduced to a German man named Karl Schaefer. Schaefer tells Nate that the Perber is the key to finding Shambhala, but Nate tells him he is no longer interested. To convince him otherwise, Schaefer sends Nate and the village leader Tenzin to find the remains of the men in his expedition who were looking for Shambhala and the stone 70 years earlier. Traveling through a series of caves to an ancient temple filled with Yeti-like creatures, Nate and Tenzin discover that Schaefer's men were SS members on an expedition and that Schaefer had actually killed them to protect the world from the power of the stone. They return to find Lazarevic's men attacking the village. After securing the village, Nate and Elena find out that Schaefer has been kidnapped, along with the Perber. They then track and find Lazarevic's convoy to an abandoned monastery. The couple locate a mortally wounded Schaefer, who tells Nate he must destroy the Chintamani stone. Schaefer then succumbs to his wounds and dies. Nate and Elena split up to look for the entrance to Shambhala. Eventually, Nate locates Chloe, who surrenders the Perber after he promises to take Lazarevic down. Nate and Elena reunite and beat Lazarevic, using the Perber to unlock the secret passage to Shambhala underneath the monastery. But Lazarevic corners them and forces Nate to choose out of Elena or Chloe, whose cover had been blown by Flynn. Nate agrees to his demands and is forced to go with Flynn to open the gate. When the gates open, the group is attacked by Yeti-like monsters, like those from the ice caves, but Lazarevic manages to kill them. It is then revealed that they are actually the human guardians of Shambhala, powered by the Chintamani stone, and dressed like monsters to scare off anyone who trespasses in the city. Just as Lazarevic prepares to kill Elena and Nate, another wave of guardians attacks, which allows them and Chloe to escape. Making their way to the top of the central temple, Nate discovers that the Chintamani stone is in fact a giant amber of petrified blue resin embedded in a giant tree of life. The true worth of Shambhala is the blue sap of the tree, which when ingested makes the drinker nearly invincible. As they prepare to go after Lazarevic, a wounded Flynn arrives and detonates a grenade, killing himself and seriously wounding Elena. Nate leaves Elena in Chloe's care and sets off to confront Lazarevic at the tree. Nate arrives just as Lazarevic drinks the tree's sap, which renders him nearly indestructible and heals his old wounds and scars. Detonating the pockets of explosive resin in the tree with his weapons, Nate defeats Lazarevic and leaves him to be brutally beaten and killed by the Guardians. Nate reunites with Chloe and Elena and they escape the city as a series of explosions begins to destroy Shambhala. Back in the village, Chloe asks Nate if he loves Elena, which he does not deny. Chloe bids Nate goodbye as Sully leads a recovering Elena over to him. While Sully chases after Chloe, Elena and Nate pay their respects at Schaefer's grave before embracing. They share a kiss, and together as they walk over to the edge of a cliff, they watch the sun set behind the mountains. And this is the end of the second game. The story of Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception begins with Nathan Drake and Victor Sullivan entering a pub in London to meet with a man named Talbot, who is interested in purchasing Nate's ring. During the meeting, Nate and Sully accuse Talbot of offering them counterfeit banknotes, and a fight breaks out. After fighting their way past Talbot's thugs, Nate and Sully emerge in an alleyway where they are surrounded and subdued by Charlie Cutter. They are then approached by Talbot's client, Catherine Marlowe, who steals Drake's ring. Nate attempts to go after her, but Cutter guns him and Sully down, seemingly killing them. The story flashes back to 20 years earlier. A teenage Nathan Drake explores a museum in Cartagena, Colombia, in search of Sir Francis Drake's ring, but is thrown out after guards suspect him of being a thief. Intrigued by the actions of Victor Sullivan, who he does not know at this point, Nate follows Sully to a keymaker and pickpockets him before returning to the museum. He steals the ring, but before he can leave, he is caught by Marlowe, her henchman, and Sully, who was working for her. Nate flees with the ring, with Marlowe's agents in pursuit, but Sully rescues Nate from the agents and decides to act as a mentor to him. Returning to the present day, it is revealed that the meeting was an elaborate setup by Drake and Sully to get closer to Marlowe, with Cutter being an old friend of theirs. With the help of Chloe Fraser, they trace Marlowe's car to a hidden library, where they manage to retrieve T.E. Lawrence's notebook and a map showing Francis Drake's secret voyage to Arabia, where he was commissioned by Queen Elizabeth I to search for the lost city of Ubar. Using these items, Nate works out that the clues to the city's location lie in Crusader crypts in a French chateau and a Syrian citadel. Nate and Sully head to eastern France and locate the long-abandoned chateau in a forest. They find one half of an amulet inside the crypt, but the two are ambushed by Talbot, who takes the amulet and sets the chateau on fire. Nate and Sully escape and quickly head to Syria. In Syria, Nate and Sully meet up with Chloe and Cutter, who have learned that Marlowe is the head of an order dating back 4 centuries. The order seeks to gain power by exploiting the fears of their enemies. During their quest, Cutter gets shot by a dart containing hallucinogens, which forces him to give his gun and notebook to Talbot. The group reaches the second crypt and find the other half of the amulet, revealing the location of the next clue in Yemen. However, while trying to exit the citadel, Cutter is cornered by Marlowe and Talbot, forcing him to hand over the amulet piece. Although Nate, Sully, Chloe and Cutter manage to escape, Cutter breaks his leg in the process, forcing him and Chloe to back out for the rest of the game, while Nate and Sully travel to Yemen on their own. Drake reluctantly follows Sully's advice to meet with his wife Elena Fisher, recently estranged. Though the two argue over the fact that Elena is still wearing her wedding ring, and how Nate seems to be obsessed with his quest, Elena still helps Nate and Sully, giving them a tour of the city. They eventually locate the underground tomb, where they discover the location of the lost city, as well as evidence that Sir Francis Drake had also found the tomb, and that what he learned there caused him to abandon the mission. Back above ground, Nate is shot with a dart containing hallucinogens. After stumbling away alone, Nate wakes up outside a cafe with Marlowe and Talbot. When Talbot gets news of Sully's location, Nate breaks free and gives chase to Talbot throughout the city. However, Nate is then knocked out and captured by Ramesses, a pirate working with Marlowe. Ramesses interrogates Nate for information about a ram of the pillars, and when Nate refuses to cooperate, Ramesses claims to have captured Sully. Nate manages to escape and eventually reaches the cruise ship where Sully is captured. Nate discovers Sully sitting on a chair in the cargo hold with a fabric bag on his head, but discovers it is a dummy. Ramesses stumbles to safety after being shot by Nate, and Nate then throws a grenade in the ensuing battle, which results in a large explosion, rupturing the ship's hull. Eventually, the water causes the whole vessel to roll 90 degrees and begin sinking. After navigating through the capsized ship, Nate finds himself in the overturned ballroom. A mortally wounded Ramesses reappears and shoots the glass roof, resulting in water rapidly flooding in, killing himself in the process. Nate barely escapes the overturned ship and washes back onto the shore. He is reunited with Elena, but she informs him that Sully was captured by Marlowe's men and was taken on a convoy into the Ruba Kali desert. At dawn, the two of them infiltrate the airstrip, and Nate stows away on a cargo plane. He is soon discovered by Marlowe's men on board, and a shootout begins, resulting in a fire on board, leading to massive decompression, which tears the plane apart and sucks Nate out. Falling through the sky, Nate collides with a falling supply crate, and deploying the crate's unused parachute, he is able to land safely on the desert floor. After wandering the desert, suffering from heat exhaustion, severe thirst, and experiencing hallucinations and mirages, Nate arrives at a ghost town in the desert, where he is attacked by Marlowe's men. A troop of men on horseback, led by Salim, appear and ride to Nate's rescue. At the horsemen's encampment, Salim tells Nate that the city of Ubar was doomed thousands of years ago by King Solomon when he imprisoned an evil jinn within a brass vessel and cast it into the heart of the city. He agrees to help Nate and leads him to the convoy spotted by his scouts. Nate and Salim destroy the convoy and rescue Sully. Salim then instructs Nate and Sully to follow him into a nearby sandstorm, but the pair lose him amidst the dust, and they realize that they have arrived at the gates of Ubar. Upon entering Ubar, Nate and Sully come across a sophisticated water fountain that Nate drinks from. Suddenly, Talbot appears and shoots Sully, apparently killing him. Overcome by rage over Sully's death, Nate gives chase and has to fight more of Marlowe's men, who seem to have been possessed by a djinn, engulfing them in flames as well as showing the ability to teleport. Nate eventually comes to his senses and finds Sully alive. The true mystery of what happened to the people of Ubar thousands of years ago becomes apparent. When King Solomon cast the brass vessel into the depths of the city, it fell into the water and began to taint the water with a powerful hallucinogenic agent. The people were subsequently driven mad, and civilization within the city collapsed. Nate realizes that the vessel is what Queen Elizabeth had sent Francis Drake to find, but after learning the consequences of his quest, Drake abandoned his mission and returned to England. Nate and Sully search the city and locate Marlowe, who is using a winch to pull the brass talisman from the water. Nate and Sully destroy the winch, and the explosion sets off a chain reaction throughout the entire city, causing it to collapse. Nate and Sully attempt to escape the crumbling city and encounter Marlowe and Talbot shortly before the floor collapses, throwing Marlowe into a pit of quicksand. Nate tries to save her but is unable to pull her out, and Marlowe is submerged in the sand, taking Drake's ring with her. After desperately trying to reach the edge of the giant sinkhole that the city has now become, Nate and Sully are intercepted by Talbot close to the exit. An enraged Talbot attempts to kill Nate and Sully, but after a brutal fight he is shot by Nate and falls out of sight. At the city gates, Salim rides in on his horse and leads Nate and Sully to safety as the city is engulfed by the desert sands. Nate and Sully return to the airport in Yemen, where Sully explains why he took such an interest in the young Nate. He then gives back Nate's wedding ring, which he secretly kept safe when Drake and Elena separated. Nate turns to see Elena joining them. The two embrace each other, and the three fly back home on Sully's new seaplane, and this is the end of Uncharted 3 and where we are before the events of Uncharted 4. So there you have it, those are the main events from the first 3 games. Not as concise as I would have liked, but a lot did happen. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, please hit the like button and leave a comment below. Anyway, have a great week guys and girls, take care, and as always, happy gaming! Yeah.